Okay, so let's get into who we have here with us today. First, we have Philip Siegel, who opened Charles Griffin Intelligence in 2009, specializing in complex financial investigation, and he has worked as an investigator since 2006. Before that, he worked for 19 years as a journalist in India, Pakistan, and running NBC's Mexico City bureau. He covered Parliament in Canada and then became a finance specialist in Asia. Lastly, as finance editor at the Asian Wall Street Journal. He won a fellowship to Yale Law School, graduated with a JD from Cardozo. He was admitted to practice law in New York in 2007 and maintains his license there. Siegel was an adjunct law professor in fact investigation at Cardozo Law School for 3 years and has spoken to bar associations all over the country on the topics of asset searching, ethics, and general investigation. He is the author of The Art of Fact Investigation, Creative Thinking in the Age of Information Overload, and has written more than a dozen articles for law journals and other legal publications on how to investigate ethically. His firm maintains 2 blogs, The Divorced Asset Hunter and The Ethical Investigator. He lives with his family in New York City. I think that's about Philip. And let me go on to Tracy, because we have 2 speakers today. Tracy Conan of Sequence Inc. in forensic accounting has spent more than 25 years investigating fraud. Her educational background includes an honors Bachelor of Arts in criminology. Mute. And law studies, and a Master of Business Administration, both from Marquette University. Tracy is a certified public accountant and holds the designation Certified in Financial Forensics and Master Analyst in Financial Forensics. She has personally completed more than 500 forensic accounting engagements in a wide variety of industries, including cases of embezzlement, financial statement fraud, investment fraud, divorce, and insurance fraud. Tracy has also been named an expert witness in numerous cases involving damage calculations, commercial contract disputes, shareholder disputes, and criminal defense, and has testified more than 90 times. Wow, a lot of experience here between the 2, and we're really excited to have you talk to us today about who to use and when, and we'll let you take it away and explain all of that to us today.
Liz, can I have you click stop share so that I can share, please?
Liz, you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Good. Well, thanks, Nicole. Thanks, Liz. And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having us. This isn't the first time I've talked to this organization. I've been a proud member of NADP, I think since the first New York chapter opened 5, 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was. It's a great group, and I'm happy to have brought Tracy along. Tracy and I have spoken a number of times together at the American Bar Association, and we've worked together. I brought her on cases, she's brought me on cases, and I hope you enjoy what we're going to talk to you about, because it's a question that comes up a lot when both of us get phone calls from people who say, I don't know if I need you, but here's my problem. So it's good to know you may need both of us or someone like us. You may need only one of us. And of course, you're going to need a good lawyer no matter what's going on. If you've got financial record analysis problems, you're obviously not going to be doing this pro se. You're going to have a lawyer with whom we would both work. So when do you need one? When do you need the other? If you have financial records, a forensic accountant is going to analyze those records. A forensic accountant is someone who's going to take thousands of pages of financial records, company records, bank accounts, and they're going to figure out if what is in front of them matches up with the lifestyle of the person. So if someone says, here's everything I have, here's all my companies, here's everything, and you can see why I'm saying I can only give you an offer of this. And a forensic accountant like Tracy's going to say, that can't be, because he bought 5 Porsches. I have a case right now where the guy has 5 Porsches, and he says it all came out of one $400,000 account along with tons of other spending. And that forensic accountant I'm working with on that case says, it just doesn't make any sense. They go in, they say, this doesn't make sense. There's a hole in these accounts. You have to know, you have to provide a software, you're going to be figuring out, and Tracy's going to go into this. Well, how do you figure that this is a good picture of what's happening? Because these are all the things that don't make sense. This company, seems to have no sales, and yet it keeps spending money that it somehow doesn't have. We don't understand where the money's coming from. So that's the kind of thing where a forensic accountant would be indispensable for you if it's a complicated case like that. And there are some cases like that. When you might want an investigator is when the other side says, we have exactly 2 businesses and here they are, and that's it. And you say, or your client says, I know we had more money than that. Yeah, I looked, and 6 years ago we had $8 million. How can we only have $500,000 now? There must be other assets out there. I don't know where they are. I have a few ideas, but I just don't know where they might be. Can everyone else hear? Someone just said that they lost sound. Is the sound okay? Okay, it's back. Okay. So with a huge void in where is this extra money? We know there's more money. We just need help in figuring out where it might be. And so sometimes what will happen is I will be brought on first, and I'll say, here's 25 companies that he says he didn't have. Here they are. Go get the financial records in Discovery. You get all those records. Then they say, what do we do with those? I say, I don't know. You need Tracy to take all those records and look at them and analyze them and see whether they make sense. Is this now a complete picture of the person's financial situation? Similarly, Tracy might say, if you've engaged her first, all this money is going out to Alpha LLC of Nevada, and I have no idea who Alpha LLC is. They might call me to say, could you find out who is Alpha LLC? And also we think maybe these people are involved in Alpha LLC because there were phone calls to those people. And can you look at those people and see if they have any other links to the person? So that's kind of how we would be able to maybe work together, and a couple of scenarios of when you would want one or the other of us to come on board.
Phil is so thorough with his explanation, and I have a less technical, less thorough explanation. When I get people who call me who say, there might be hidden money. I don't know what's going on with the money in my divorce. I need some help, and maybe I need a forensic accountant. And I explain to them, if you have a lot of financial records, that's where I spend my time. I'm very focused on tracing that money and seeing where it bounced from account to account to account, or just to see what the money was spent on. You have thousands of transactions and you don't know, could some of this have been for an affair? Could some of this suggest that there's a secret piece of real estate that we don't know about, maybe because someone's paying a utility bill? So when it's document-based, that's me. When it's what I call, sorry, Phil, the wild goose chase, that's more of a Phil thing. When there is someone who says, I just feel like there might be some businesses, or I feel like there might be some assets around the world, can you, as a forensic accountant, find them? That's really not my specialty. That is more the specialty of a private investigator, and especially someone like Phil, who is doing this in the divorce context on a recurring basis, because he knows where to go. And what I really like about someone like Phil, who's experienced with this, is he can help the person with expectations. So when we have the client or the potential client who comes in saying, yeah, he's just a shady guy, and I think there's money hidden around the world. Well, that's not much to go on. But if someone instead comes in and says, listen, my husband has a history of entering into business transactions, business deals with people that he meets in his day job. He's an executive at this company, and he's had people he's done business with at those companies that all of a sudden I found out he's got a business that he owns half of with them. And he's had a history of this. Well, now Phil has something to go on and an avenue to look down. And so it's sometimes a matter of figuring out, is this wild goose chase based in fact in some way and something tangible that he can dig into? Or is it just, I think my spouse is shady, let's look into it.
And I don't know where the money might be. It could be anywhere in the whole world. That's also not a good start.
No, not at all. I would like to tell people, if you do have questions as we're going, you can feel free to type them in the chat box. We'll try to keep an eye on the chat box and keep up with the questions as we're going through, because if you have a question, someone else probably has the same question, and it might make an interesting discussion. So more specifically, when do you need both of us? When there are these complicated issues which kind of have both of the things coming together, document-based and research-based. So, just doing what I do, which is tracing that money, is not necessarily enough to uncover everything. Like I like to tell people, if I start with the bank statements and credit card statements and investment account statements, we will probably uncover some spending that will give us clues to those hidden assets, to maybe an income source that we didn't know about, to some secret spending that was inappropriate. But that's not going to uncover everything. The fill kind of person is going to be able to maybe find some real estate that there weren't any other clues in the documents about, or find that business interest that was very cleverly kept out of the personal documents. Phil, there is a question in the chat box. Are background checks SOP for you on foreign jobs or case by case?
If it's foreign, well, a background check and an asset search are a little different. I like to tell people a background check, you care more. Forensic jobs. No, not every forensic job requires an investigation. Some do. I think more do than people want to engage on. And sometimes it's, it's too late. Sometimes someone will say, or we've had all the accountants looking at this, and now our trial's in 4 weeks and we need to go into bank records in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I say, forget it. You can't do that in a month. Forget about it. So it's better to always consider it early rather than wait too long. And sometimes we'll have the time, sometimes we won't, but we're never going to have the time to do a really great investigation in 2 weeks. And we get a lot of requests for that, unfortunately.
I, as a forensic accountant, in a lot of my cases will run a very basic database search. So a paid database where I'm putting the person's name in to just see addresses that they have had, real estate that pops up there, vehicles that they have, other associates that they might have. But for me, it's very, very basic. And I'm just looking for, is there anything huge that sticks out here? But the full-blown background check is the private investigator thing. And I do find that a lot of clients are reluctant to go that extra step, but I think it should be done in more cases than it is.
It's also not as expensive as you might think to do. I mean, unless someone has 400 LLCs scattered all over the place. If someone has had a network of, 7 car dealerships in 2 Midwestern states, and you think there might be something, an apartment, another business, you're not talking about $10,000 to do an investigation on that person. Maybe 3 or 4 would do it. And if there's enough money at stake, it just depends how much money is at stake. People come to me and say, I think maybe there's $100,000 in a bank or in a company domiciled in the Cayman Islands. And I say, forget it. The amount of money you're going to spend going to court in the Cayman Islands won't make it worth it. But if you think it might be something here, stateside, an extra apartment, a car, another business or 2, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult to do it. And it's not that expensive to do it. Where it gets very expensive with asset searching is when you get into certain overseas jurisdictions. Not all of them. Some of them are more open than we are for money, for information. United Kingdom, for example, much more open than here.
All right, let me talk a little bit about lifestyle analysis, just to get everyone on the same page with what we're talking about when I say lifestyle analysis. If you want to know more, I wrote a book on it. It's not that interesting, but
yes,
the book itself.
It's interesting.
We use lifestyle analysis to uncover the hidden income, the hidden assets, the secret spending, or to analyze known spending to determine the lifestyle of parties. So what I'm literally doing is going through all the statements, taking all of those transactions, putting them into a database, into Excel, categorizing them, and looking for anomalies, looking at what was the money spent on, on the face of this, who are the vendors that are being paid and things like that. And does this make sense given what we know about the parties? Why do we care about the income that might be hidden and the assets that might be hidden? Well, of course, assets need to be divided, and people in divorce want to get their fair share. The income drives spousal support and child support. So we want to make sure that we're accounting for all of that. And interestingly, the existence of hidden income might point to some hidden assets as well. Hidden assets might suggest that there is a source of hidden income, because those assets have to be obtained from some money. It has to come from somewhere, and probably somewhere that your spouse didn't know about. If you can uncover one hidden asset or one hidden source of income, then I'm asking what else is there, and sort of, we're unraveling. It's like taking, one thread from a sweater and starting to pull it. You find that one thread and you pull, and God only knows what you can find. So you can see on this slide the types of things that I'm talking about with hidden assets. These are some of the most typical places that I find in divorces that people are hiding things. They are stashing cash. They are sometimes having offshore bank accounts. I would say it's less often offshore and more often domestic in the typical divorce case. I have people coming to me all the time saying, well, what if he has an account overseas? Well, let's think about it. Is there any history of overseas banking? Is there a great deal of wealth, maybe family wealth, where there were, accounts overseas, business interests overseas? Does that really make sense that there would be offshore stuff? More likely the cases I'm dealing with, it is domestic bank accounts that were just not disclosed that we're trying to find. Assets being sold or transferred to related parties, an asset, someone goes and buys a townhouse and puts it in their brother's name, hoping the wife will never find out about it, things like that. How are they hiding assets? They can use cash to purchase those assets. They can hide that cash, open those secret accounts, overpaying creditors. And I'm going quickly through these because we don't have a lot of time, but something that I see sometimes is people overpaying the IRS, overpaying a credit card, and just letting that money sit there during the pendency of the divorce, hoping that no one discovers it. $10,000 as a credit balance sitting on a credit card, waiting for the divorce to be done, and then they're going to request the refund. Ways to hide income, underreporting on tax returns. Now, this gets interesting. We probably all dealt with people who have businesses and are intentionally underreporting their income on the tax returns. All of a sudden, they get into divorce, and the spouse who's not involved with the business, the spouse who's going to be relying on child support or spousal support, says, hey, wait a second, we've been underreporting our income. That's not the true income. And I want to make sure that the support I get is based on the real income. They're creating some problems for themselves by underreporting willfully in the years leading up to that divorce. So all sorts of ways to hide the income. I don't need to read these to you, but when it comes to hiding assets, I was going to ask Phil to tell us a story about not looking at the Georgia property.
This is on our website. It was such a fabulous case. A woman came to us 7 or 8 years ago, lived in Europe, was really forum shopping to try and get her divorce in court here as opposed to in Europe, because there were better divorce laws here. And I don't think she succeeded, but she said to me, I don't think we have anything in the US, but I just want to make sure. So could you check and see if my husband has anything? And I know we have one thing, this property in Georgia, but don't look at that because I know about that already. So I said, okay, I'll look on. There was not even any courthouse I could go into because they just had no ties to the US, had not had any ties for 30 years. And I did what she asked. I looked. And when she came back in, I said, you're right. There's nothing much other than the Georgia property here. But I did notice as I was looking that Georgia property of yours is no longer yours. It was sold last year. And she said, and I said, and it was sold to a company controlled by your brother-in-law. And someone forged your signature and they sold it. And she said, well, it doesn't matter because it was valueless anyway. I said, That property was at the intersection of two interstate highways in Georgia, and it contained one of those huge truck service centers. So there was probably rental income for years and years, and I think it probably sold for a lot of money. So this to me underlines the rule that your client is always a very good first stop for where you should maybe start to look. And your client knows more than you do about the subject's habits and history, but your client doesn't know everything, because otherwise they wouldn't need you. So you take what they tell you and you verify it. You say, thank you very much. And in this case, I don't know what happened. I don't know if she was able to throw that asset into the divorce back in Europe or not, but it was quite an interesting find, and it took 15 minutes.
Bill, you're amazing, but we never tell people that it only takes us 15 minutes, right? Because otherwise it looks like we're not that specialized or not that in demand.
Oh, I meant 15 days. Sorry.
There you go. Right. So when I'm talking to, can everyone mute themselves, please? So when I'm talking to attorneys and they say this, and this, and I might
get a small cold. Yeah.
Could you mute yourselves, please? All of you. Thank you.
Anything else? That's it.
Now, Tracy, you unmute yourself.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep. Got it.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to attorneys and they say, I want you to do certain things, I say, oh, that's easy. No, let me correct myself. That is not easy. That is very specialized. But the financial analysis piece, the last part of this slide, a lot of my focus when I'm doing the lifestyle analysis is on the income tax returns and really on the account statements, bank statements, credit card statements, investment account statements. Again, taking all of those transactions, putting them into a database and massaging that data, looking for anomalies, sorting the transactions in different ways, looking for unusual amounts, unusual payees, unusual timing and patterns and things like that. So, I always say to beware the shell game when we are doing the lifestyle analysis and looking into the finances. If we have one person in this divorce who is shuffling money around, trying to hide things, we need to be really skeptical about it. I always say the judges are really smart, but we might have to remind them and we might have to point it out. You know, I get brought into cases sometimes where my client is what we would call the out spouse, the one who is not in control of the money, not the main breadwinner. And they are asking the court for money to be awarded to them so they can hire an expert like myself. Of course, the other side says, no, we don't want to give them any money to hire that expert. And we have to remind the judge, the reason this is necessary is because that person has been hiding things and concealing things and not disclosing things and not giving us documents. We would rather not spend this money either, but they are creating a situation in which we have to in order to ensure that things are fair in this divorce. And so sometimes it really is just a matter of reminding these judges about some of these obvious things. So the shell game, here's just a few common things that I see. The party that stops taking a salary or has a reduced salary or gets a year-end bonus every year, and suddenly this year there is no bonus, because employers will sometimes cooperate with that party and withhold pay until after the divorce is over. We see a business that was always profitable, but is now losing money now that divorce was filed. And I'm sure probably everyone on this call has seen stuff like that. My job in those situations is to go through the finances and figure out a way to prove that the business really isn't losing money, looking for customers that have been shuffled off to a side company, looking at expenses and showing the court none of the expenses have gone down, but the income has allegedly taken a big hit. This makes no sense. Why is the company paying the same level of wages to their hourly workers if they're not creating and selling as much stuff as they were before? They're saying their income is half what it was before, but the payroll stayed the same. This makes no sense. I had a great case where One party in the divorce owned and operated a laundromat, a coin laundromat, a cash-based business. Very hard to prove what's going in and out of this. You know, people are putting cash into these machines. If the owner goes every day, pulls that cash out and decides not to take it to the bank to deposit it, how would we ever know that that income is disappearing into thin air? Well, I got creative. Let's subpoena the water company and see what the water bills say about the fact that he's telling us that the laundromat is only making half what it used to because there are all sorts of things going on in the neighborhood. Guess what? The water bill showed same activity level as before. Things like family or a job, loaning money, gifting money instead of paying wages. You know, the party that runs a business and says all the profits are being reinvested. So I have no income, I can't pay support. These are the kinds of things that I'm looking for and helping to educate the judges in the cases. Marianne asked a question: what is the amount of potential hidden assets that justifies the expense for a PI or a forensic accountant? For me, I don't necessarily give, you know, like a specific dollar amount, but I do tell people who contact me, forensic accountants typically start at around $10,000 or $15,000 for a project. And so keep that in mind when you're thinking about how much might be missing, hidden, et cetera. And of course, it's a catch-22. If you knew how much was hidden or missing, you wouldn't need me, right? But I try to talk them through their scenario and what might be going on so we can come to an assessment. Is it $10,000 that you think could potentially have been hidden? 50,000, 500,000. And I will actually give a recommendation to them once I know more information like that. Phil, what do you do?
Well, I tell them that a decent asset search can be $2,500, $3,000, but I also tell them that without a court order, I can't go get bank accounts. If there's time later, I'll talk more in detail about that. But we have a system in the United States where I'm not allowed to look at your bank account to decide. And here we are, so the secret databases of bank accounts that actually don't exist or don't exist for legal access. I tell people I can't find out how much he has in the bank until you sue him for divorce and a judge orders the bank to hand over accounts. And that's a good thing, because I also can't look at your bank account and figure out how much you paid your last investigator and then try and charge you 80% of that. And I can't look at anybody's bank account without permission, because it's private and it's illegal to do that. The fact that people can do that, some investigators will do that. I tell people I could also, would you like me to get you some cocaine? Because that also is illegal, but I don't do that. And I don't help you set up businesses in North Korea. That also is illegal. So it's a little snarky, but they then get the message. I'm not the person who's going to go do that. We have databases that are legal. They're pictured there, and they are just a starting point for what you do when you try and find assets. Those databases will tell you some companies maybe that people have used. They're really much better for phone numbers and addresses, maybe associates, but they're really working off public records and some non-public information, like that little swipe card you use at CVS or Rite Aid to save some money when you go to the drugstore or at your supermarket. Those stores sell your name and phone number to these databases. So sometimes I can find out where someone was at his mistress's apartment because he ordered a pizza and gave his cell phone to the pizza delivery people so they could tell him when the pizza was there. And then the pizza place sells their customer list to these database providers. And I find out that that cell phone was matched up to this apartment. And that is the apartment of a subordinate, a legal aid, someone who is supposedly just a family friend, but he's there all the time. And so they're very useful things, databases for that. But they're not going to tell you he has a business over here and here's how much it makes. So then you have other data sources of data, Google. And people tell me, well, we've done a lot of serious Googling. How much more could you find? When they're coming to me and saying, is it worth hiring you? And I tell people most things are not on Google. because Google yourself, I tell people. If you Google and we've all done it, let's be honest to ourselves. We've all Googled ourselves to find out how much people might know about us, how famous we are. And there's really almost nothing about almost all of us on Google, except what maybe we want people to know. Maybe it's 1 or 2% of everything you actually know about yourself. Every place you've worked, everyone you ever had a fight with, they're good people to interview when you're researching people. It's people who don't like them and who they don't like. Everyone you've ever dated, everywhere you've ever lived, where you went to university. Did you really finish university or not? Do you have stock options in companies? Almost none of that's going to be on Google, because Google is, the way I like to think about Google is, it's like that reference librarian. When you had to do a paper in high school or college and you didn't know where to look, you'd walk into the reference library, or even in elementary school, and you'd say to the librarian, I have to do a report about, lobster fishing in Maine. How many lobsters does Maine catch every year? The reference librarian doesn't know that, but she'll say, well, right over there is the U.S. Department of Oceans and Fisheries yearbook. And over there, you'll find the Maine yearbook, and you might start there. And then there are periodicals that deal with the fishery industry and journals of commercial fishery and so forth. And they will tell you where to go look. And that's what Google does. Google doesn't have all the court cases on it, but Google will tell you, if you have a case in Kalispell, Montana, what county Kalispell, Montana is in, and what's the website for the county clerk in Kalispell, Montana, in that county. And then you can go to that county and see, is the stuff online or not? If not, you're going to have to send someone to the courthouse and do research. So that's the way I like to think. Google and these databases are simply a starting point. And again, if you know what you're doing, you can do everything I do. It's just that you don't know what you're doing necessarily, because you don't do it all the time. So that 15-minute finding the Georgia property at the corner of at the intersection of two interstates might take someone else 4 hours to do, because they've never looked at Secretary of State websites in 2 different states, and they've never looked at Google Earth, and they've never done a lot of things that I did in those 15 minutes. So that's why it would take longer. Just as if, a dental surgeon can extract a tooth in 10 minutes, but try having your 22-year-old son with no training in dentistry do it. It would take longer. They might get it out, but it would be more painful, and it wouldn't take 20 minutes.
Phil, very briefly, we have a question. When do you use social media access as an investigative tool?
Every single time.
Well, there you go.
It's one of the very the first things I look at. And what you need to remember when you're looking at social media is a lot of people are now savvy that social media can be an invasion of your privacy. You don't realize how much stuff that you thought was private is public. So there are a lot of people that don't have a Facebook anymore. I do a lot of background checks of CEOs of big companies, for investor clients. Those are not asset searches; they're just general background searches. And a lot of these, people who are running $50 billion companies think it's not a good idea to have Facebook. So you don't know where they hang out on vacation and who their friends are. But guess what? Most of their wives and adult children have Facebook. Teenage children do. And if you know who his wife is, boom, there you go. Here's our vacation. And here we are water skiing in the Cayman Islands with our dear friends, these fund managers, or the kids who are 19 years old have Instagram or Facebook or other stuff. And their parents are. And sometimes the guy will have a Facebook page. It just won't be under his name. It'll be under some other name you wouldn't have guessed. But going in via a family member, you can find it. So social media, very, very important. And ethically, one thing is I'm not allowed to friend people if they have closed their contacts and their history to non-friends. It's been established in most jurisdictions, if I pretend to be someone else and say, hey, CEO of huge company, I want to be your friend, and I put in a picture of an attractive younger woman, or I pretend I was in his class of 72 at Duke, or whatever make up a persona, that's unethical. So I won't do that. If you go in and you can find it through another open account that's linked to him, great. If not, you don't get anything. So public records, I mentioned going to the Kalispell County, Kalispell, Montana's county, whatever county that is. Very, very essential. People think everything's on the web. Most court cases are not on the web. Even some places where current cases are on the web, older cases are not. So when you're looking for assets, you're looking for companies. Companies are organized by state, and most of the states call the department that deals with company registration the Secretary of State. There are a couple of exceptions, Utah and a couple of other places, but if you do ask Secretary of State business search and put the state in, Google will, like a good reference librarian, show you the website for that place. And it's always free to look, except for maybe Texas, where it's $1. It's never very expensive, and it's mostly free. That's where you're looking for companies. So you have to know what state I'm looking for. But then the litigation generally is organized by county. So that's why I needed to know not just Kalispell's in Montana, but which Montana county is it in? And then sometimes when you're doing a pricing for clients and you say, all right, this is going to be an expensive one or a cheap one because we have to look in 8 counties. And that means 8 different trips to, if you're looking around Metro Atlanta, it's expensive because Metro Atlanta is 20 counties. Chicago's basically Cook County. There's DuPage over on the west side, but in Chicago, you're often 1 or 2 counties maximum. New York here, 5, plus New Jersey, plus Long Island, plus Westchester, and then Connecticut. New York can be expensive, but you need to know how many counties you're looking at. And as I say, you often have to send someone to the courthouse to actually do the search. Sometimes you can see that there are cases there online, but you can't read them until you go on site. And each county organizes its website and its record keeping differently. And so it's the same with tax assessment. That's going to be done by county. In New England, it's often done by the town and not the county, but mostly it's the county. And you need to have all these different websites available to you. And they're often, as I say I put that in my book, I think, Be Nice to Your Databases. They're often on very old technology, kind of crummy web 2.0 technology. Sometimes they will only work on a Microsoft browser. They crash a lot because counties don't exactly have tons of money to have the world's nicest websites. But you have to figure out also how things are set up. And it's the user experience on a county website is not the same as the user experience on the Bank of America or Chase websites, which are very good and make it pretty easy to use. So you got to get in there, and I have people who can go, all over the country, and that's important. Now, how do you figure out where to start? When you read Sherlock Holmes or other detective stories, it always seems so logical. Sherlock Holmes says, it was very logical. I saw this, and then I did this, and I did this, and then I did this, and I was right. And he's always right because it's fiction. But actually, if you look, there were a lot of different ways he could have gone in that first step, but he didn't because it's a novel. I could go and start looking in Nevada because maybe the guy's in Nevada. I could start looking over here. I could start looking over there. You have to play your hunches and probabilities and go look in the most likely place first. And then if it seems like it's getting somewhere, you keep going. And if you're absolutely at a dry hole and you say, I just can't find anything, you may want to switch and go somewhere else. So you have to have a combination mindset of openness, but then be able to change gears pretty quickly and go some other way, because you have a limited amount of time and money in which to do your searching. And that's the thing that's hard to teach, because you have to be able to have a couple of different theories up in the air at once and say, maybe it's this and maybe it's that. I don't know. Let's just see what it is, and let's not rule anything out, and we'll keep going. And it's easier said than done. And that's really what I could say about mindset. Just when you're guessing, when you're trying to figure out maybe there's something there that I haven't seen on a piece of paper. An easy example is people tend to have ways they name companies. If you're trying to name a brand new company and you want it to be a secret company, you'd be surprised how many names are taken. You can't call a company in most states Amalgamated Industries because there probably is one already. So anyway, if you see that your guy cops to having Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 LLC, I like to look at the Secretary of State and see if he's got other alphas, because he might have alphas 3, 4, and 5. I've seen that. I also saw a fraudster once who sucked people into his investment fund, his Ponzi scheme, by starting out with Alpha 6. And you assumed there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there weren't. He just started with Alpha 6. I thought that was brilliantly devious, and he got away with a fair amount of money. So this is one thing you do. Then the other thing is you can go behind any company and say, what names are connected with that company? The husband in a case may say, this is my business, and we rent our offices. I like to say, who do you rent from? Sometimes it could be he could rent from himself. The company that owns the building is his company, or he owns part of it, or it's owned by his brother. And his brother doesn't have any money. So how does his brother get money for this office building? Maybe our guy gave the brother the money and the brother then bought the office building. Something like that. Similarly, if he rents his house, who's the landlord of the house? And similar to Alpha 1, 2, 3, there are people who have naming conventions. I had a guy name everything after operas. I had a guy name all his companies after different streets in the financial district in New York. So that reduced the number of possible companies to 200 or 300. And I found quite a few of them just by going with a map over each street name and seeing how he established them. And that's a little taste of how we operate.
So going back to the tracing of funds that a forensic accountant might do, it's a process, and it's finding bits of evidence that lead to more. So I'm looking to uncover those clues in those financial documents. There was a case, I call this income or not. Former husband and wife were arguing about child support, and he was trying to have his income be as low as possible for child support purposes. She was saying, no, he makes a lot more money than that. He had this manufacturing company that was quite successful, and he owned the real estate that the manufacturing company leased. So he disclosed income of $500,000 per year. Great. You think that's a lot of money. She's going to get a lot of child support. What is anyone crying about? Well, he actually was making quite a bit more money than $498,000 per year, because what he didn't disclose was the income of this manufacturing business. It was a C corporation. And if you know anything about that, the income of that C corporation doesn't become his personal income reportable on his tax returns until he actually takes the money out. So what he was doing was leaving the money in the C corporation, saying, let's pay no attention to that. That's not really my money. I didn't take it out. But if he doesn't take the income from the business, is it really income? My position was yes. So what I did, this is just an example of a case. I analyzed the income of the business, looking at the income tax returns. I found interest income that he was making. I found that the business paid personal expenses for him. So by looking through the bank statements and credit card statements and general ledger of the business, I was able to go through line by line and find things that were obviously personal expenses. Things like purchases at a jewelry store, purchasing an RV for personal purposes. Obvious things I can find easily in those documents. And then you think about how many of the not obvious things are we overlooking? And I was looking at, he had other rental properties, and he had disclosed some income from those rental properties. If you look on the right-hand side of this slide, I show you what he disclosed in terms of his income, which was that $498,000 per year. What I came up with on the actual was over $1 million a year of income. His wages were fine, but he had a lot more interest income that he didn't disclose. That business had profits of $550,000 a year that he was saying, well, that's not mine. I haven't taken it out. And we made a case in front of the judge. Judge, he is the sole owner of the business. He controls that money. He is purposely not taking the income out because he wants to, decrease the numbers for this case. We found these personal expenses, $61,000 a year that he was running through the business. And then interestingly, on the rental income, he had actually misreported the amount of income, said it was over $300,000 per year. It was actually $270,000. I'm always honest in these cases. If I'm going to make him take a hit for something he didn't disclose, some sort of income, if a number is truly lower than what he disclosed, I'm going to certainly bring that to the attention of the court as well. So my process very quickly, because we're short on time, and I just want to leave a little bit of time for some questions as we wrap up. What I'm doing when I'm tracing is I have to prepare. What are we trying to prove is the question. That's going to dictate my approach. Make sure we have a proper time period. It's often looking at the last 3 to 5 years. That's very typical. And then managing the documents can be a big deal if there are a lot of documents and a lot of data. Then I categorize the transactions. I use categories that are going to work well when someone's filling out that financial affidavit, so they can take my work and use it for that document that most courts will require in the divorce. Then I go through line by line, analyzing these transactions, comparing to other financial information, maybe comparing to a bank statement, maybe comparing to a financial disclosure form. And I'm looking at things in light of what we know about this person, their habits, known spending patterns. Do these transactions make sense? And I always want to remember garbage in, garbage out. If we have bad data, if we have bad quality controls over my process of getting into the database, we're not going to get good results. But then the results, I identify categories that we need to investigate further. Do the numbers that I'm finding match what was reported? Are there those clues to hidden assets? And does that cost of the lifestyle match what's being reported? So there are cases where, let's say, there is cash income and there's no paper trail. There's no way for us to uncover what cash is coming in, but we can, through other means, figure out how much this person is spending on a monthly basis. For example, I had a case where I think the guy was reporting something like $200,000 of income a year. And I found that he was spending $50,000 a month on his personal lifestyle. We presented to the judge that we can't account for where that extra money comes from, but it has to come from somewhere. Phil, I think this is your slide.
Yeah. Courthouses, as I mentioned, when you're looking for a secret company, sometimes the person will be sued personally because he guaranteed a debt that his company took on. And someone said, I'm not lending to your brand new clean company. You have to back this debt too, personally. So when the company defaults, he gets sued. You then look at the lawsuit. You always look for his lawsuits. And you say, who's this? What's this company that got sued along with him? Oh, gee, that's his company. So not only do you see that company, but you also have a person who's done business with him, who doesn't like him, who you could interview. So the court indispensable for finding out a person's picture and companies and litigations, as you see. I've talked about newspaper articles, also indispensable. People blab to newspapers when times are good, and they talk about themselves and where they have their money and their history. And all that stuff can come back to haunt them when they all of a sudden have a marriage that they're trying to get out of and try to hide. And news releases that they put out talking all about who works at their company and how well they do, that's all there forever. Maybe not on some news databases, but Bloomberg, for example, keeps every news release for a company that's on there. So you go back and you can't get rid of those. You can take your website down and take the stuff off your website. It'll still be there, and I'll find it. And licenses are very good too, because people generally, it's not a good idea to lie about their address and that kind of thing, phone numbers, when they get a license to be a dentist or an optician or whatever it is. So we always check professional and occupational licensing as well.
As you can imagine, Phil and I could talk for hours about this stuff. There is a question about cryptocurrency and NFTs. I'm going to have to pass on that question because that is a whole session in and of itself. And so not something we have time to get into today, but as we wind down with the last couple of slides, I'm going to give you kind of a last call to put questions in the chat box if you want to, that we'll try to answer before we wrap up in the last couple of minutes. One of the things that I have been working on in the divorce context. Last year, I rolled out the divorce money guide. You heard me talk earlier about the fact that it probably costs $10,000 to $15,000 to get started with a forensic accountant. And quite frankly, that is unattainable for probably 95% of the people going through the divorce process. And so I wanted to make a resource available to them. If they have concerns about the money, if they need to get comfort with what has our money been spent on, could they do this themselves? So I put together the divorce money guide. I do, workshops on the divorce money guide itself, but it is, taking people through what does this divorce process look like? What are some red flags of fraud? When should you be suspicious? How do you get your financial documents? Some people don't, if I said, go get your bank statements, they wouldn't even know where to start. So I walk them through how to get their bank statements, how to go directly to the IRS to get their tax returns when their spouse won't turn over the tax returns, and then what to look for in them. As a non-accountant, I say do-it-yourself forensic accounting. We all say, gosh, the average person is not going to become a forensic accountant. Of course they're not, but I can show them really easy things to look for. And here's an example. I say, take 12 months worth of bank statements. Make sure you have one full year. Take a green highlighter. Go through and highlight every paycheck that was deposited for those 12 months. When you're done highlighting, count them up and tell me how many paychecks you have found. Now, most people get paid twice a month or every other week. That means the normal person gets 24 or 26 paychecks throughout that year. If you went through the bank statements and found that there were only 20 paychecks deposited, Houston, we have a problem. You have probably a spouse who is siphoning off money. Now, could it be legitimate? Maybe there was a savings account that occasionally an extra paycheck would go into when you guys had extra money. But that's something, if we see only 20 paychecks deposited, the next step is to ask the question, where are those other missing checks? So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to help empower people who need some investigative work, but can't afford someone like me or someone like Phil.
My book it talks a lot, mostly about the mindset that I mentioned, the ways that we sometimes trick ourselves into thinking there's nothing there because he's a New York guy and there's no point in looking outside New York, when in fact you have to be open-minded, as I say, because we want to make things easier on ourselves. And if you begin to chuck away possibilities of what to do and where to look too quickly, you won't look anywhere. And at the same time, you sometimes can convince yourself, if you find some piece of gold, hey, this just looks like him with a company in Nevada. It couldn't be him because he doesn't go to Nevada. It doesn't matter. You can have a Nevada company. I could make one in 10 minutes sitting right here in New York. So my book's more about mindset, but what I like to talk about when I can is some of the ways you can go yourself, if you don't have money, to get records. Secretary of State in Florida is the most open one in the country. You can search on a name, say, show me every company he's a director in. And a lot of times that's going to save you money if you eventually need to hire someone. And maybe you'll find what you need just looking. America has tremendous amounts of public information that's available. You just need to know how to go get it. And with the internet, it's a lot easier than it used to be.
I always mention Miles Mason's book, The Forensic Accounting Desk Book. So it is really digging into the accounting side of divorce for attorneys, CDFAs who want to know more about figuring out how to find information in those divorces, how to find financial information that will help you. And then my newest book, Find Me the Money, which is coming out in May. Take control, uncover the truth, and win the money you deserve in your divorce. It is for clients who are looking towards finding that money on their own. There is a question in the chat box. Do family law attorneys do the divorce money guide, or is it really up to the client? My product, the Divorce Money Guide, is really client focused. It is about them doing it themselves. If they had the money to spend on a professional to do it for them, they would spend it. To have their attorney do it is going to be hourly fees that are probably not something that they can afford. And that's really the whole concept. So I do have family law attorneys, quite a number of them, who have actually bought the Divorce Money Guide because they wanted to see what it's all about and how I'm doing this with the videos and an ebook and worksheets and things like that. But it is really definitely client focused and very much hand holding for the client who needs to be empowered to do it themselves, maybe to save money, maybe just because they need the peace of mind of doing it themselves. And with that, we have come to the end of the hour. Phil, if you have any closing comments, you're welcome to make them.
Thank you for listening. We've scratched the surface, as you see, but I know, Tracy, I am approachable. The website, the phone number on the website, I'm happy to talk to you about anything we've talked about here and anything we haven't.
Absolutely. Look us up, shoot us an email. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks to the NADP for having us.
Amazing, really chock full of such great information. We will be posting this recording on the website. I did see some people asking for the PowerPoint. If that's something you guys are comfortable with, you can email it to me and I will put that up on the website. But if you need Philip or Tracy's email address, we will have that under the recording, or you can feel free to put it in the chat. And everybody should know by now how to save the chat. But if you don't, you hit the 3 dots in the chat box and something should come up that will say save chat. But as I said, their information will be with the recording on the website. But thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation. Good to see you both. And now we will be going into our breakouts and I'll let Liz take it from here. You're muted, Liz.
There we go. Now I'm not muted. Thank you so much, Tracy and Philip. Really, that was so informational, and you can see that people want to know more, and maybe we can get you guys back on here for an extension, you know, a deeper dive into maybe Bitcoin or something like that, because I know that's a hot topic of understanding how to trace those. And for everybody else, we're going to go ahead now and we're going to start the breakout rooms. For those of you that are CDS graduates, the code for the CE will be SCASSETS 23. Nicole will she'd put that in the chat box. So it's SC Assets 23. And if you need to know the link on how to submit your continuing education for your certified divorce specialist certification, you can email support@thecdstraining.com.